Now, with this week's episode of Steins Gate Zero, I have to say this is one of the least predictable episodes to the series, at least in my opinion. The reason I say this is because with last week, with the whole laptop being examined by someone who we don't know who's looking at basically Pandora's box, if that information gets out there, World War III is more or less on the horizon. And I didn't see anyone in my comments section, I didn't think this. I don't think many people would have thought Daru was the one looking at the laptop. And it makes total sense for the narrative to have Daru be the one looking at it, but the series has established that this is the worst world line, this is the world line where World War III is bound to happen. Basically, our assumption is naturally going to assume, at least at episode 11, that who's looking at this laptop is the worst possible person, a double agent, someone who you don't want examining it. So to see it actually be Daru the one who is examining it, it's a kind of not only a breath of fresh air, but it makes the narrative more interesting because it starts to reel you back and say, okay, maybe things aren't going to be as predictable as maybe I once thought. And I think it's more interesting having Daru be the one examining it because it allows for Maho to be filled in on what's going on with the time machine, because obviously she knows things are going on. I mean, Okabe drops the word time machine and she catches on, but she also catches on that she doesn't feel included in this and that she has to be pushed away. But Okabe doesn't want to include her for a pretty obvious reason. If she knows that there's a time machine that they could go back and try to save Kurisu, someone as close to Kurisu like her is probably going to want to do that, and he's not willing to risk it. He's seen firsthand what messing with time can do, and he has a timeline where Mayuri can be safe. He's not going to screw with that. So I actually like how they went with Daru, not only because it's unpredictable, at least for me. I'm sure there are people who thought it could have been Daru, but I didn't see that personally, and I don't think it was a common thought process. So not only does it become not predictable in that sense, but it also makes the narrative more interesting because it allows for Maho to be roped into this situation, and it becomes even more interesting. And not to mention, it still does get messed up. You see the Helmet Riders come right back in, storming in, and I think the way they went with this was also a little unpredictable because you're having people like Maho, basically, is she going to die? And you're thinking things are going to get bad, but how many people thought another group of people would come in with guns blazing, destroy the laptop, and then go away? And it's confirmed, or at least it's assumed in this episode, that it was the Russians who were probably doing that because they wouldn't want anyone other than them to have the notes or kind of the ideas of time travel, because obviously Russia's been experimenting with time travel with the earthquakes and things like that, and the whole time leap that did happen. But also, if her notes got out there, it would basically become US versus Russia, and then it would just become World War III, and we still know that's going to happen, but I think how they directed that scene, it was like, okay, so not only was Daru the one looking at the laptop, but then you just throw this other group coming in with no real warning and just blow up the place pretty much. It was really fun to see that, but it's even more fun to see Yuki, because Yuki was a character a few weeks back. I said, I mean, her hand was damaged, or it was her wrist that was damaged because she got kicked by Suzuha, and she was holding her wrist, and I was like, okay, it definitely seems like Yuki's going to be the one who was under that helmet there. However, it could be a red herring, and this week's episode, once again, she has a cut on her hand, and she claims it was, you know, just a knife or something like that, and it was something from work, and it easily could have been, but then you see the female professor hiding her arm, and now it becomes, okay, we don't know which one is the red herring. Is it the female professor, or is it Yuki, Daru's future wife? Either one of them could have been the rider, and we don't know exactly which one was the fake and which one is the real deal. And that's even more interesting because you're thinking, okay, it has to be Yuki at this point, they're not trying to hide it, but then they throw that extra layer. And I'm sure there's going to be people saying like, no, it has to be the professor at this point. There's no reason that they would introduce it, and it very well could be the professor, but the fact that they have two characters with a similar injury, or at least the professor seems to have an injury. So I like how the series is taking the aspects that have been presented and twisting it. They're making it so now the viewer is thinking, okay, I had an idea of where the show's going, but now I don't know exactly how it's going to be executed. Is Yuki going to be the one to betray the group? Is it going to be the female professor? Like, how exactly is everything going to go down, and how are we actually going to lead to World War III? And the series became even more interesting than it already was. I think the directing in this episode was actually really well done. I think Maho was probably the best directed character in this episode, with everything that was happening to her, from basically feeling like excluded from the conversation between Daru as well as Okabe, Okabe, but then you also have the scene with her more or less paralyzed in the bed with Okabe sitting by her side until she falls asleep, and how that conversation went down, and her kind of self-doubt about herself, and Okabe kind of just telling her how it is, like she truly did have care and compassion for Kurisu, even if she starts doubting herself, and just how everything was directed with her character, which actually really remarkably well done. We didn't have to give this much care to Maho as a character, and I know she's not done, even though she's flown back. I know we haven't seen the last of her, but I like how it was directed because she didn't need this much care for the plot to move forward, in my opinion at least. I never read the visual novel, but I think they could have excluded as much time as they focused on her, and they still would have made this an entertaining season, but giving her that spotlight, I think made this episode even more special than it was, and it really helped sell this episode as being one of the more unique and interesting episodes of Steins Gate Zero. Not to mention, those words, they just hit you, because it's like, man, you really wish this Okabe could have that happy-go-lucky life, but things just always go bad for him. This episode was, I think, everything I personally wanted. I thought I knew exactly what was going to happen, or I had a pretty good understanding of what was going to happen with that laptop, and they completely shifted and shattered my expectations and made this episode stand above a lot of the other ones. Like, there's more dramatic and just batshit insane episodes of Steins Gate Zero. However, this is the episode that really, I didn't know which direction they were going to go. As soon as the episode started, things just kept shifting more and more, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, we have characters who are trapped. Okay, we got another group of people just shooting up the place, the laptop's destroyed. Now we have two red herrings. Which one is actually the real culprit behind the helmet? Which one is a fake? Are they both fake? It starts to become a little more interesting and kind of shifts the Steins Gate formula around more than what we're typically used to, because I feel like, you know, after Mayuri got killed so many times in the original Steins Gate, your expectations like, okay, I know what to expect. She's going to get killed multiple times and we're going to try to stop it. And now with Steins Gate Zero, I thought I had a pretty good understanding of where it was going, and now I'm kind of sitting back and I'm like, I don't know exactly where the series wants to go or how it's going to execute World War III, and it becomes even more interesting for this. This was a very, very fun episode. Sure, the art style dips quite a lot in this episode. There was pretty medium shots where Okabe's face and then other characters' face weren't that detailed, but even with that, the way they were directing these scenes, it was really well done, and it really was never a major problem for me with how the art was directed, and you know it will get cleaned up when it's on Blu-ray, so it's not even a huge deal for me. But this episode was very fun, completely unexpected with how I thought it was going to go down, but let me know what you're feeling. Did you love the episode? Did you hate it? Your favorite moment? Let me know down in that comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, and if you're new, also be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.